It's June 19th, 2014. It's a chilly summer night in Punta del Este, Uruguay. Laurel and Cara Maria are two challenge legends and real-life best friends. So you're probably wondering how we got here. How did two seemingly untouchable competitors end up in a one-on-one elimination matchup to send the other one home? Why does Cara Maria have a cast on her hand? What's this wall elimination all about? Why is the challenge logo on fire? And is it true that Darrell is responsible for all of this? To answer these questions and more, let's hop in my DeLorean and travel all the way back to April of 2010, the beginning of Fresh Meat 2. Welcome to The Challenge, an elimination story. Laurel and Cara Maria have possibly the most complex relationship in the history of the challenge, and it all starts right here. But for right now, let's put our focus on Darrell. As a Fresh Meat 2, Darrell is a multi-time champion and the most feared man in the game. In fact, at this point, he had yet to be beaten in anything on the show. Anything. In fact, he's usually the one doing the beating. Brad, your thoughts?
Let's do it. Well, you look weak right now.
I'm in the corner trying to stay away from him.
You think you're caught now, son? Damn it!
Whoever he chooses here carries significant weight. Darrell's a queenmaker, able to bestow riches and victories upon his partner beyond their wildest dreams. So who does he want to crown? For that, let's rewind 1 week earlier. 13 eager fresh meat convene in British Columbia so TJ can run them through a series of tests to showcase their skills and athletic prowess. Similar to an NFL combine, but with 100% less man thigh. There are two women whose numbers stand out above the rest, Laurel and Cara Maria. During their series of tests, Cara is able to do more pull-ups and has a slightly faster 40-yard dash time. Two things that, while important in the abstract, don't mean much. On the other hand, Laurel is dominant in the obstacle course, and if you squint real hard, almost any daily challenge can be boiled down to some form of an obstacle course anyways. To most, or at least to me, that would be far and away the most important aspect to that combine. Fast forward a week, and now we're back to Darrell's decision. All of the vets look over the stat sheets for each competitor and glances them over in person. I don't know if it was the 40-yard dash time that sold him, but that little man inside Darrell's head,
You gotta listen to the little man.
My little man's an idiot.
said to choose Cara Marie, or as she later come to be known as, Cara Maria.
Cara Marie.
Cara Marie.
Cara Marie.
Cara Marie.
Cara Marie.
Cara Marie.
So now put yourself in Laurel's shoes. Your whole life you've been physically dominant in sports. Gym class was your domain. No dodgeball game was played growing up without your impact being felt. You've never been picked second in anything. Who is this puny little wimp that Darrell chose over you? Kenny corrects Darrell's mistake in real time and scoops up Laurel. I want the tall chick in the back. It might not seem like much, but Cara Maria being chosen ahead of Laurel is a singular moment in that long, complicated timeline of this show that becomes inherently integral to everything that leads up to that fateful night in Uruguay. Zooming out 15,000 feet with a full 2021 perspective, there is nothing wrong with choosing Cara Maria over Laurel. Cara Maria has a legitimate argument to being the best woman or man to ever do it, period. But we didn't know that then, and we wouldn't find that out for a few years. Right now, our eyes are clear and our hearts are full.
Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
And we're starting down the path where we would learn so much more about our heroes. During their first ever daily challenge together, TJ lined up everyone, men vs women, in a classic challenge that can be gently described as get these people in minimal clothing and get them muddy. An early episode tradition dating back to when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Cara Maria's performance was underwhelming. Laurel, on the other hand, served us an amuse-bouche of dominance on her way to a full 12-course tasting menu of oppression over her opponents. This marked her first daily win. first of many to come. This also marked our first sighting of Laurel's make an awkward arm movement in celebration move out in the wild. This move would make multiple appearances in the future. When it came down to voting time, unbeknownst to her, Cara Maria's fate was already written. Her partner was the biggest threat. Remember, at this point in his career, he hadn't lost in anything. Darrell and Wes had lingering beef from the past, threatening to boil over.
We could walk outside and handle it like men.
I told you I would fight you any day of the week.
At this time, Wes was the judge and jury in the house, and controlled every single vote. So Cara received her first welcome to the challenge moment, and another long-standing challenge tradition was born when Cara reacted poorly to being voted in. The first of many to come.
Cara Maria and Jamie.
Cara, oh my god, she's pissed.
I don't want to talk to you right now.
Cara takes everything too personally.
Now that the messy part was through, the party raged on. Remember how fun these shows used to be? But some of us had school in the morning, and very much needed to be well rested. Kids, if you're watching, when you get into college and find yourself in a setting such as this, a loud, boisterous party is happening in your living room and you have things to do in the morning, look, we've all been there. One day you'll look back and remember how lucky you were to have been there. The solution? You tough it out. Maybe pull a trusted member of the house aside and kindly ask them to tone it down a tiny bit. You know it's not going to work, but at least you tried. What you don't do is what Cara Maria does. Something that's never worked in the history of noise, people, or parties. Let's roll the tape.
In case you aren't aware, we're up for elimination tomorrow. A little respect would be appreciated.
It's now the next morning, and we're mere hours before exile, and Darrell gets curious about his partner's athletic past.
Did you ever play sport competition?
I was a horseback rider. It was just me and my pony.
When exile began, in a result that is a far cry from her resume, Cara Maria was an absolute anchor. It's hard to watch. Darrell did his best to hold it together, but Cara, as many have done before her, completely blew it in her first elimination. However, there is one silver lining that she can take back with her to America. With this performance, Cara goes down as the first challenger to defeat Darrell in anything. And this is the same Darrell who's beaten challenge legend Danny Jameson head to head. Back at the house, Laurel continued handing out ass kickings for the low price of free $99.
$3.99.
Her partnership with Kenny proved fruitful, and together they racked up win
Kenny and Laurel.
after win
Kenny and Laurel.
after win
Kenny and Laurel.
after win.
Kenny and Laurel.
Well, you get the picture.
Kenny and Laurel.
Week by week, Laurel was establishing herself as a cunning, overpowering force to be reckoned with, while Cara went home to tend to her horse and count the minutes until she got another phone call from MTV. Their rookie seasons could not have possibly gone any different. That could have been the end of it. Cara would have gone on to live a happy life away from the toxicity and pressure of being Cara Maria from the challenge. And Laurel may have gone on to win the next 5 challenges in a row, then disappear with her well-invested money, retiring to chase her passions before she was 30. They might have just been 2 foreign ships passing in the night. But then, somebody let Siobhan pick teams. Fast forward a few months, and our heroes land in the Czech Republic to begin their new adventure in a fresh season named Cutthroat. The season begins with the gang rushing, suitcases and all, into what would eventually become the Elimination Arena. TJ lets everyone know that the challenge has already started and this race would determine the teams. But much to their surprise, TJ says that whoever came in last, rather than first, would get the right to be team captains. Oh TJ, you tricky bastard. The team captains were made up of a rookie Camilla and noted challenge heavy hitters Siobhan and Emily with 3 E's. With this as our starting point, things were bound to get weird. And we were not disappointed. Wonky is just about the only word I can come up with regarding the order of these selections. Dunbar? Vinny? What the is going on? It's only fitting that Laurel was again the second pick. But then Cara Maria started doing her best Aaron Rodgers impression and began to wait. She waited and waited and waited. While she was chosen first on Fresh Meat, this was a brand new season. Cara Maria was the second to last woman picked. Her first round exit the season prior has her reputation at an all-time low. But regardless of draft order, the only detail that matters at the end of the day, Cara and Laurel were yet again tethered together by destiny. In a twist of poetic coincidence, their nuanced relationship came to be represented by the color gray. Two opposites brought together by the great people at BUNIM MURREY, ultimately destined to be together and ultimately destined to destroy each other. As of this moment, they might be wearing the same jersey, but the power dynamic between the two could not be more clear. Darrell's draft pick is equal parts a distant memory and a barely healed scar. So the idea of Cara being on her team, an inferior competitor directly tied to her on-field success, the one and only thing that truly matters to her, was sandpaper to Laurel's soul. Despite her bubbling romance with resident crazy person Abram, Cara spent the first part of Cutthroat struggling to find her place within the ecosystem of the game. Laurel, on the other hand, has beyond proven herself as an on-field bully, but was also quickly showing herself to be an off-field one as well. And while Laurel spent most of her day-to-day proving to everyone something she's already proven, Cara spent her time dressing like Jeff Hardy and canoodling with Abe. Her actions invited criticism from every angle, as most accused her of using Abram to further her game. Let's get future challenge champion Ashley's thoughts on this topic.
Politicking is when you politic with your vagina and you sleep with some people to get farther in the game.
But this was all unfounded and mostly a propaganda campaign perpetuated by Laurel and Ia with 4 eyes.
My fear is you're keeping Cara Maria for a personal reason. When people hook up, they're gonna stick together whether they think they're a good player or not.
Cara Maria's role is to jump into bed with Abe.
Somewhere along the line, subconsciously or not, Laurel made a decision. She determined that the only way to get Cara to perform to a level she deemed acceptable was to break her down piece by piece. Her first step was to spread lies about how terrible Cara is at everything.
The weakest person on our team. Idiots who don't see that, I'm annoyed. She's freaking clueless.
She's never really done things like this before. She was very harshly made fun of in school.
She is a scared little girl that needs somebody to protect her.
Cara Maria, you're the weakest girl here. Go home.
Every challenge we do, we think where we need to put Cara Maria so that she fits the best, because we know she can't think on her feet. We know that she can't throw a ball. We know that she can't.
Did she truly believe half the things she was saying? I doubt it. To Laurel, Cara was just a lump of unmolded clay. So what do you do with unmolded clay? You work at it. You shape it, you press on it, you push it. You put it through hell to turn nothing into a work of art.
I'm molding the last ones into the monster-matic they go.
Now my money is prepared.
And to understand how she goes about this, let's step back and take a look at the movie Whiplash. If you look at the surface, the movie Whiplash is about a kid who's really good at drumming and a band director who needs to chill the f*** out. But peeling back the layers reveals a story about a sociopathic educator who saw massive potential in their young pupil. So with the knowledge that there are no 2 words more harmful in the English language than good job, J.K. Simmons begins tearing down Miles Teller's character piece by piece. This was to break him down to nothing so that he could be rebuilt into a phenomenon. Whether she meant to or not, this became Laurel's game plan. She sensed a competitor within Cara Maria, but she lacked the killer instinct to ever take full advantage of it. And with Cara's fate directly intertwined with her own, Laurel decided that the 2 most harmful words in the English language were good job.
Were you rushing or were you dragging?
She is a scared little girl.
Rushing or dragging?
You're the weakest girl here.
Rushing or dragging?
She can't.
So you do know the difference!
No offense. People will eat you alive. You want to know why I'm angry? I single-handedly won you $20,000 the other day. I have to share that money with you. I don't feel like you deserve it.
Was this the most effective way to handle someone like Cara Maria? Probably not, but it was a decision that Laurel made. From Laurel's perspective, it was an easy decision to make. This was the person picked ahead of her on Fresh Meat. Surely she can handle this. right? In the end, the results were a version of Cara Maria that was able to keep up with Laurel's silly expectations every step of the way in the final. This eventually ended up in a second consecutive runner-up performance for a disappointed Laurel, and a runner-up performance for the happy with herself Cara Maria. Same outcome, 2 reactions. Life is all about perspective, people. Cutthroat wouldn't be the end of Laurel molding her personal challenge monster. She still had some work to do, and as fate would have it, the perfect opportunity would soon present itself. Coming into Rivals, Cara and Laurel were hungry, but for 2 separate reasons. Laurel came into Rivals expecting and demanding victory. Cara came to Rivals to get Laurel off of her back and to earn the long overdue respect of her peers. And then right away, because the challenge gods love us and want us to be happy, TJ pairs the 2 of them up in a brand new format called Rivals. Again, fate would have it that Laurel's success is tied to Cara Maria. Laurel, your thoughts?
She doesn't have the mentality of a competitive person.
And Cara, your response?
No matter what I do, I feel like Laurel's judging me.
And she was. She just spent an entire season breaking Cara down so that she could build her back up in her own competitive image. When Laurel says, I don't think Cara has a competitive spirit, what she's really saying is, I don't think Cara has my competitive spirit. This theme ran strong through the first part of Rivals. Laurel and Cara spent much of their time in the house apart, with Laurel doing her best to stay away from her. Laurel was busy chasing CT while Cara was chasing her approval. At a certain point, Cara had to begin wondering if this was the start of another unnecessary mind game. While Cutthroat was about tearing her down, for Laurel, Rivals was about keeping her distance and making herself feel untouchable. Her bet was that Cara's longing for approval would get bottled up and spilled out on the field. Some could misinterpret this as borderline emotionally abusive behavior, but for Laurel, it's just what's necessary to win. Things remained quiet for them outside of an early elimination against a formidable duo of Camilla and Teresa. While this may look like a strong matchup on paper, what we got was seriously underwhelming. Teresa and Camilla were both early enough in their challenge lives that they just didn't have any clue what they were doing out there. Real quick note, the reason that the 2 of them were even rivals in the first place is because for some really weird reason at the beginning of Cutthroat, Teresa accused Camilla of stealing someone's sweatpants, which is just, well, it's just as incredible as it sounds. Our heroes quickly disposed of the sweatpants twins in an oversized version of playground tic-tac-toe, minus the tick, the tack, and the toe. Otherwise, as far as their impact in the game goes, it was pretty minimal. They snagged an irrelevant win during a Guys Week in episode 6, but then the daily challenge before the final women's elimination arrived, and it did not go very well for them. They DQ'd in a daily challenge that honestly looks like a lot of fun, at least for the people on the ground. As the clock ticked and Laurel just kept blasting Cara Maria with a fire hose, one cannot help but see the giant metaphor for their relationship, and at the end, they were the only team not to finish, putting them directly into the jungle. The night after, at the club, Cara got shouted at by Jen, mostly for just existing, and Laurel kind of had her back. She made herself present, but again, everything with them is at an arm's reach. This kicked off what was to become sort of a everybody hates Cara Maria club in the house. But more on that in a bit. Back to the jungle they went, and fortunately for them, their opponents were the much smaller Jonna and Jasmine in a football drill mostly used by overly enthusiastic high school offensive line coaches. This was such a lopsided matchup that it's possible Laurel would have won this this all by herself.
Laurel looks like a defensive lineman on an NFL football team. Then you got poor little Jasmine over here. It looks like a 7-year-old Girl Scout.
This decisive victory punched their ticket to TJ's final, Cara's second and Laurel's third. Their relationship at this point was still a bit reluctant, though Laurel's Terminator brain began sensing that she needed to be a bit more of an emotional rock for Cara. This went about as well as you'd expect, and it always came off as though Laurel was playing a role in a poorly written play, rather than being a genuine friend. And then, Wes poured a bottle of Pepsi on Cara's head. If Darrell choosing Cara first on Fresh Meat was the fork in the road that defines their relationship, this was a we buried a body so now we share a secret forever moment that calcified everything. Laurel and Cara went from a shaky arranged marriage to blood sisters, and all it took was some good old-fashioned mob mentality bullying. We all have that friend or family member that we pick on, or maybe you even are that person. But at the end of the day, only a select few are actually allowed to make jokes. As soon as someone else does it, it's like this sacred line was crossed by an outsider. And it was that moment that Laurel's sisterly instincts took over and her public viewpoint on Cara shifted dramatically. These positive feelings for Cara may have been harbored under and deep-seated from competitive drive, but that's the point. They were always buried. All it took was a redhead from Kansas City wasting a 2-liter of soda with his shirt unbuttoned for those feelings to unearth themselves.
All of the things that have happened to Cara, they're hurtful. They're hurtful to her, and it's hurtful to me to see that.
The final challenge came and went, with Laurel and Cara again settling for second place. Laurel had far and away proven her merit as one of America's great athletes, and if you're paying close enough attention, Cara wasn't too far behind her. Like a mama bird pushing her young off the branch, Laurel took a mini challenge sabbatical and Cara was left to fend for herself. Cara was officially on her own and away from the overbearing energy of her challenge counterpart. On Battle of the Exes, she was paired with former cutthroat fling and real-life boyfriend Abram. Being paired with someone like Abram, a challenge legend who's fearless and competent at basically everything, that can be tough for Cara Maria, who at this point derives her confidence from the person closest to her. You'd think her experience with Laurel would have prepared her for this, but rather than learning from experience, she left all of those lessons behind. Together they did okay. They lasted about halfway through the game, eventually losing to a tough team in Ty and Emily. Moving on to sophomore year in college, this brought a bit more of an individual Cara out, away from the ghosts of her past in Laurel and Abram. Cara was finally allowed to ride it out solo and play a game on her own. Unfortunately, this was another disappointing run relative to her successful beginnings. Showing up to Battle of the Seasons late, she represented the Fresh Meat team with Camilla, Brandon, and Big Easy. This foursome represents possibly the worst team chemistry in the history of teams or sports. Facing a house full of rookies determined to get any and all vets out of the house, Cara suffered an early defeat with fellow Fresh Meat Brandon at the hands of Chet and Sarah in a not-so-fast elimination that wasn't even particularly close. Cara was in the midst of a confusing challenge career that includes 2 runner-up finishes, 1 middle-of-the-road nothing performance, and 2 early exits. Some of us are late bloomers, and Cara was no exception, so when she showed up late to Rivals 2 with the bicep size of CT's head, nobody was excited.
Cara Maria.
Yay.
This blows.
Womp, womp, womp.
I can hear crickets.
Paired with Cook, they formed a solid duo who would go on to finish in second place. Another second place finish for Cara Maria. While her first one may have been an accomplishment to be proud of, a third second place finish in a row was beginning to get a bit worn out. She now had just as many second place finishes as her former rival turned best friend Laurel. During this stretch, the narrative around Cara Maria remained the same. She did herself no favors being whiny about eliminations and allowing her weaknesses to overshadow her strengths. But episode by episode, challenge by challenge, the narrative around Cara became less and less attached to reality. What the reality truly was that Cara was becoming one of the most well-rounded competitors on either side, men or women. She was a threat to win any elimination and any daily challenge. But her reality had not yet caught up to perception. There was one thing all three of these seasons had in common. Laurel wasn't there. And if Laurel's not around, the top of the line for the woman is much more wide open. They've been on the same team and they've been paired up, but they have yet to have the opportunity to be direct opponents, to be truly on their own. If only the challenge gods had something up their sleeve for our heroes to spread their wings and fly. It's hard to think at this point, with the two of them being best friends, that they could have found themselves in a situation like this. Let's look a little closer. The crowd is pretty thin, and that means we're already deep into the game. But how deep exactly? We're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back a bit.
No, it's
Oh, too far. Perfect. Laurel had been gone for a while, and in the interim, a lot of different women made their claims for her title of baddest in the room. But with Emily or Evelyn notwithstanding, there just simply wasn't another woman as dominant as Laurel. And so heading into free agents, her confidence was already through the roof. On the flip side, this season represented Cara's opportunity to officially make her stamp on the game. Eventually though, the question of friendship or winning would be front and center in Laurel's life, but she doesn't know that yet, so more on this in a bit. For now, all is well. Cara Maria and Laurel are two best friends who have the strongest alliance in the house. Not only is their bond as strong as ever, they themselves are as strong as ever. Arguably, they're the top two women in the house, and in a game where individual votes and strength is crucial, they were sitting as comfortably as anybody could hope. Throughout the history of the challenge, there were only a few ways of finding yourself in an elimination round. You either lost that day, another player chose you directly, or you were voted in democratically. But free agents changed that game, introducing the kill card. If you weren't a part of the winning team, pair, or individual for that daily challenge, you became eligible to pull a kill card. This seemingly random block of wood held all the power. If you flipped it and there was a skull engraved into the back, sorry, too bad, see you in the sand. This was a game changer, and a few schools of thought sprouted up around it. Leroy, for example, decided early on that it was more beneficial to take his chances drawing the kill card than being voted directly in, and he played the game accordingly. Johnny Riley rode the wave of luck and somehow managed to avoid it a lot. Jordan took it as referendum on his pride and masculinity and made one of the ballsiest moves this game has ever seen, flipping over every card to force his way into an elimination round against Johnny Bananas. Let's pause for a second and take a look at this elimination. Jordan wouldn't make this excuse, and neither will I, but you have to wonder if the fact that he only had one hand made him think twice about following through with this plan. We saw this game earlier in the season when Frank beat Dustin and John A beat Emily with 3 E's, and it's something that clearly involves a lot of grip. He didn't hesitate because he's Jordan, so of course he didn't, but keep that in your back pocket. Those are just 3 of the different approaches to the same twist in the game, but in classic Cara Maria fashion, her relationship with the kill cards just couldn't be simple. The first time she flipped it, she was safe and all was well. And then the second time, well, if there's one thing that any challenge competitor learns along their journey through this game, is that you do not under any circumstances taunt the challenge gods. So when Cara Maria flipped the card and it was blank, she did a very awkward, very blatant celebratory dance. I imagine the challenge gods sitting around watching their creation play out, and to see this person with whom they've blessed with the second chance after second chance mock them in such a way, well, she had something coming to her. Watching Cara Maria go against Naya in a elimination round that eventually put Naya into the hospital was much less of a challenge elimination round round, and strictly a war of attrition. This is where the legend of Cara Maria was truly born. Cara absolutely wanted it more. This was where all the hard work and the memories of all of those second place finishes come to a head. And if none of that fancy nonsense makes you believe it, just ask TJ.
She's gnarly. If I had to pick anyone to go against, you'd be the last person that I would choose, for sure.
Within the challenge, a TJ Lavin cosign is one of the most important things you can achieve. So heading back to the group standing on the bridge, Cara was a made woman, and things were only looking up. Everything from here on would only work out in her favor. She would get down to the ring and flip the blank. Oh, wait, that's the exact opposite of what happened. There are just certain things in life that aren't worth playing with. You don't bet against LeBron James, you don't fight gravity, and you do not, under any circumstances, mess with the challenge gods. Cara Maria may have easily taken care of LaToya, which is an unfortunate outcome for all of us LaToya truthers out there. But taunting the challenge gods has its consequences, and if she thinks she was done facing them, she's got another thing coming. For 4 weeks after that, Cara remained safe from the clutches of her demons. She won a couple challenges and remained on the right side of being safe on some others. Overall, she steered as clear as she could from her carved wooden nemesis. That was until the 9th week of eliminations. Again, Cara found herself in the sand ready to take part in the draw. Pulling the kill card for the 3rd time in one season is some of the worst luck in the history of this show. So her elimination against Jessica gets started, and it's clear immediately that these two are not holding back. And as it goes, it's much closer than many may have thought. Cara's underdog mojo had kicked into full gear. The entire house has her back, they're behind her full force. But most importantly, she has her best friend Laurel behind her.
Use your anger! Get in there, Jess! Go! Jess, put it in there.
Wait, what? Aren't Laurel and Cara Maria best friends? Why would Laurel be cheering for Jess? Well, let's rewind a little to make sense of all of this.
No, it's a necklace!
Oh, not again. Laurel spent most of her time on Free Agents, walking around, churning the cauldrons of paranoia, and absolutely scaring everyone to the core. And I gotta say, it was pretty earned. At this point in her career, she's never finished anything but 2nd place, and her reputation had only grown in her absence. For the most part, she was even more dominant than she was before. With Cara Maria by her side, her notebook, and a fresh romance with Jordan, Laurel had a strong foundation. She coasted to victory from the start, winning 3 of the first 4 daily challenges, and it wasn't even until the 5th week she even ran into a speed bump. Longtime rival and fellow fresh meat Teresa hatched a Vote in Laurel campaign. This was risky, but ultimately it worked, and it worked even better when Teresa managed to back out last minute, letting the group do her dirty work for her. And of course, this information made its way back to Laurel, only adding fuel to the fire. In the elimination round, Laurel made quick work of Jasmine in a game of balls in that was a wrap from takeoff. Remember that wall elimination we saw Jordan compete in earlier, where he lost to Bananas? That elimination was important for Laurel too. What Laurel had in Jordan was someone to take her mind off the game. Was there politicking happening on both sides of the equation here? Yeah, probably, but they did seem to genuinely like each other. But now with Jordan gone, her focus shifted 100% to the game. And the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 things on Laurel's mind were winning. Again, remember, she had only come in 2nd place up to this point. Something that can only be like spiders crawling on the skin of someone as competitive as Laurel. With Jordan's exit giving Laurel nothing to distract herself with, was the evil challenge gods gliding over her shoulder to present her with a choice? Friendship or winning? After everything you know about Laurel, and after seeing every step of their journey together laid out here, the choice seems pretty obvious, right? The very next week after Jordan left, Laurel found herself on the losing team in a very underrated daily challenge, finding herself in a situation her best friend Cara was already well accustomed to by now. Laurel found herself facing the draw for the first time in earnest. I'd argue it was right at this moment that Laurel made her choice. She had to. Victory would supersede any relationship she had at this point. Anissa would put up a fight, but it was a fruitless endeavor. Laurel is just too good.
Too big, too strong, too fast, too good.
Laurel activated her Terminator brain and scanned the house. She realized that winning time was upon her, and any slight distraction would not be tolerated. Enter Jessica. Laurel saw her mark. She knew that befriending Jess was a completely meaningless gesture, and I have a feeling that these two never spoke again the minute they were separated this season. The plan was simple. Cara was her biggest competition. While they were best friends in real life, at this moment in time, she was a threat. And what does someone like Laurel do with a threat? She extinguishes them. So she pushed Cara away and started spending time with Jess. Being around Cara was too real. Their interactions returned to how they were years earlier. Everything at an arm's distance and cold encounters. It was a move straight from the front of the playbook. Which brings us back full circle. Cara Maria vs Jess. Scrappy underdog Cara going against the human incarnation of every personal insecurity she's had within this game. Jessica, who has earned nothing at this point, standing directly in her way while being cheered on by her very own best friend. Laurel's justification for having Jess's side during their battle was questionable at best.
We're not speaking. I'm rooting for Jessica. Cara Maria doesn't need any extra cheers tonight.
But no matter how many pull-ups Cara does, no matter how many members of the house have her back and are cheering her on, nobody can overcome the challenge gods. While her victory over Jess may have just been a formality, one small moment in this sliver of time eventually changed the entire balance of the game. 3 things broke that night: Cara's wrist, her chances of winning, and her trust in her best friend. While Cara was being tended to by the best EMTs Uruguay had to offer, Nany and Laurel discussed friendship and what it means. Understandably, Nany asked some pertinent questions regarding Laurel's actions.
Were you and Cara best friends?
Laurel, as if she's being interviewed for a podcast, gives us her take.
The term best friend is getting thrown around. I have other friends.
Yeah, okay, maybe that's true. Friendship exaggerating is as at home on the challenge as intense CrossFit workouts. But Laurel wasn't done yet.
I want her to learn a lesson, if that sounds weird.
Yeah, Laurel, I'd say that does sound pretty weird. It's always been a competition. By befriending Cara, she was neutralizing her as a threat. And all it took was a game like Free Agents to hammer home that wedge between them. At this point, Cara's luck could not be any worse. She flipped the kill card 3 times and now her wrist is fractured. What's a girl gotta do to get a break around here? By now, the house had started catching up to what was going on. CT, Zach, and Johnny Riley confronted Laurel about it, and it went about as you'd expect. Laurel getting defensive and walking away is a clear sign that she deep down knows her treatment of Cara was wrong and straight up indecent, especially to someone who considers you her best friend. Upon return to the house, Cara showed off her brand new accessory. Hard to tell if Under Armour sponsored the cast, but I wouldn't be surprised. Upon review by the Boston Mafia, Laurel was allowed to walk into the room and speak to Cara, assuming she was here to apologize, which wasn't the case. Rather than saying, "I'm sorry for being a jerk," Laurel could not shake herself out of game mode. While she did know that what she's doing is wrong, the competitive drive inside of her knows that it's still game time. Friendship will come later. The question lingering over everyone though is, would Cara be able to stay? People have been sent home for less, and a broken wrist does seem to be a hindrance to performance. Spoiler alert, it was. But ultimately the challenge gods allowed her to stay. Unclear whether or not that was because they liked her or because they wanted her to suffer a little bit more. This daily challenge that involved digging and lifting a shovel up and down wasn't the best for someone with a fresh hand injury, but Cara powered through. Eventually, the puzzle turned out to be the equalizer, and this tanagram was equally as puzzling for all 5 teams, before Bananas and Nany pulled out a clutch win, leaving both of our heroes flapping in the breeze. This left Nany with a decision. Vote in the perfectly healthy Teresa or the polar opposite, Cara Maria. She was clearly torn, but Bananas, knowing that he wouldn't want Cara's injury potentially slowing him down at some point in the final, was doing everything he could to throw his body in front of it. After battling with her stubborn partner and TJ's rules, Nany eventually conceded and voted a tearful, broken Cara Maria into the final women's elimination. As fate would have it, Cara's opponent would be chosen with the kill card, the same kill card that has steered Cara towards a position that she is in now. And because the challenge gods have a sick sense of humor, Laurel doesn't even flip the card. Devin flips a blank card, making the decision for her. Laurel and Cara Maria were two particles stuffed into a Hadron Collider that is the challenge, and forced into a collision course that could only destroy them physically and emotionally, and Cara could only help but laugh about it. Thanks to Darrell, with a bit of push from challenge legends Siobhan and Wes, our two heroes went from two strangers to teammates to enemies to rivals to friends to sisters to competition. What do you get when you take one of the most competitive humans on the planet and combine it with someone with unlimited potential whose only desire is to fit in and be accepted? You get Laurel and Cara Maria, the most complex, interesting relationship that the challenge has ever produced. It's relationships like this that keep the longtime fans coming back for more every season, because eventually, something as simple as the order in which two competitors were chosen can and will reverberate years down the line. At the end of the day, Laurel chose winning over friendship. It's as simple as that. She was presented with a fork in the road and made a decision. Was it worth it? That's not for me to decide. A huge shout out to the person who wrote this script, Mr. Brian Batty. If you liked the video today, the script was him. He is super talented and writes amazing Medium articles about the challenge. I'm not joking, they are legit insanely hilarious, well written and thought out articles, and I urge you all to check them out. The link is at the top of my description and I promise you will not regret it. Thank you, Brian, and it was amazing collaborating with you. Check them out. Blood, sweat, and tears went into this video from both of our ends, literally. This was a very challenging video to make, but I think it is something very special and I am so thankful if any of you made it to the end. This video has been in the works for a couple months and has taken 1 full month to edit, but now we are done. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at RookieRevo, link in the description, as well as Brian's Medium page. Next week we are back to What If, so stay tuned and until next time, take care.